Welcome. This is It's Still Here, and my name is Luke Blackburn. This week, we're going to continue building on the foundation that we started in week 1 and 2. Just as a quick reminder, in week 1, we talked about the sort of involuntary mind movement that each one of us most likely experiences on a day-to-day basis. Whether or not you are aware of that is something that is up for debate. Now, what we do is in the back of our minds, we are constantly creating this sort of mental activity, sort of chatter. It could be mentally labeling things. It could be comparing things, people. It could be judging people. It could be, ranking them or having certain mental positions. It could be worrying about something that's going to happen in the future. It could be a regret about the past. These are all things that are happening inside of our mind that most of us aren't even aware that they are happening. So bringing awareness to those things is really important. And we talked a little bit about that the first week. Second week, we talked about something similar. But this was the mental stories and the narratives that we unconsciously create to sort of help us make sense of the world around us and things that happen to us. Now, these stories are, they're based upon a sort of identity that we may or may not know that we've built up in our own sort of self, how we are identifying or what kind of self-image we've been creating. These stories tend to sort of strengthen those stories. They tend to sort of reinforce those stories. And we talked about during week 2 the fact that when you go a little bit deeper on these stories, you start to understand that most of them aren't even based upon truth. There's little to no truth in these stories. They're just there to create separation, to create sort of an us versus them, or again, just to sort of reiterate and reinforce existing identities or sort of ways that we think about ourselves. And again, same with the first week, it's really important to be analyzing and bringing awareness to these stories, because we can start to see, hey, this stuff that I'm telling myself, these narratives, they're not real. Why should I allow them to be perpetuated in my mind? And being able to identify those things and recognize stories can lead us to self-awareness and, being able to better, have mental talk and really hopefully improve our well-being. Now, with that in mind, today I want to talk about sort of a natural extension of those things. It's certainly building upon these two ideas, and instead of trying to sort of bring awareness to something that may already be happening in our lives, this week we're going to talk about potentially more of a way to live, or a way to be present within the world. So I want to start off by just talking about the fact that we modern humans sort of live in between these two polarities, and the polarities of time. So we have past on one side, we have future on the other. Now, the past is a memory, right? The past was something that happened. We are thinking about the past. We're trying to bring memories back. And there's lots of data and studies that show our memories really are not that reliable. There's quite a few holes. There's a lot of gaps. We fill in those gaps and narratives, again, sort of with our own version of how things actually went. So we look to the past. There can be a whole sort of host of emotions. It could be regrets about things that we've done. It could be, pride. It could be good things. It could be bad things. But we look to the past, and unfortunately, the the big things that come up for most people are sort of the negative things, such as regret, such as shame, different things of that nature. Then on the other side, we have the future. And, the future doesn't exist. The future is purely imaginary. That's not to say that we can't predict the future with at least some degree. But the future, oftentimes, we look to for salvation. We look to the future in order to become something. We put desire into the future because the future is what's going to save us. Because we know that right now we are not being saved. We are very much people that identify with imperfection, and we look to the future again to sort of say, somewhere out there, I'm going to become whole. And if you think about it, the shape of whatever that looks like probably directly matches up with the shape of the missing piece from the past. So we live here on one side and then on this other side. Now, what's happening in the middle here? What's happening in between past and future? Well, it is the present moment. It's the now. It's what wise women and men throughout history have actually been pointing to as a solution to this polarity thinking all along. Now, before we actually get into a little bit more about the present moment, the now being presence, I want to just quickly explain that the things that we talked about in the first and second week, the things that are happening in our mind, they're happening largely because of a part of our mind that is pretty much controlled by the ego. And people call it the egoic mind. And the egoic mind is there to create a separation. It's there to create sort of clear distinctions between this is my body, that's your body. This is what I'm good at, that's what you're good at. This is what I'm not good at, that's what you're not good at. It exists, most likely it was an evolutionary trait that humans picked up over the years. It was a very good thing that we picked up, and that's why we have a modern society that we do. But at one point, humans, instead of using the egoic mind more as a tool, we started to identify with all of those things that were happening in our minds, all of these separations, all of these labels, all these comparisons that we know are often not real. We started to identify with those. And that has created so many problems because we have completely isolated ourselves from the world and from other people, largely because of this. We'll go more into the egoic mind in the future, but I just wanted to briefly mention that, that is sort of the perpetuator of this mental activity, these narratives, these stories that we're telling ourselves. So getting back to the present moment, the now, this thing that exists between the polarities of past and future, the now is really the only thing that does exist. It's a weird thing to think about, but if you investigate it, you'll probably agree that the present moment, this infinitely unfolding moment that we call now, it's all that ever is and ever will be. The things that happened in the past, the good, the bad, and the ugly, they all happened in the present moment, in the now. The things that the things that we hope are going to be coming down the road to save us or do whatever, they will not happen in the future. They're going to happen now. They're going to happen in the present moment. So these wise women and men that have been hearing the scores of humans throughout history complain and wonder why life isn't X, Y, or Z, so often they come back to this central idea of what is this and why it's so important. So the whole idea of this video is to introduce that there's a way to live that is not connected to the regrets and the shame of the past. And it's also not connected to the worries and the anxiety of the future. And the way that we reach that place, the way that we can be and live, is by focusing on present moment awareness. And that means just purely existing in the present moment, disconnected from the mental movement, the mind noise, the stories, all of these things that we tell ourselves that often aren't true, but we identify with. There's a way to exist in the moment that is 100% true. It's based in reality, and it's a way to fully exist in presence and in just allowing the world to unfold as it will, and having no resistance to that. So I want to talk about some of the benefits of why we would want to try to live more in the moment, because I think that's going to help maybe clarify it for some of you that might still be a little confused by what do I actually mean by living in the present moment. And I wrote these down because I really wanted to focus and make sure that I did cover these in this video. So I'm just going to go through this list, and we'll just start with the first one here. So one of the benefits of being able to live in the moment and not have all this stuff happening in your mind and being connected to what's happening right in front of us is, right off the bat, it's going to be reduced stress and anxiety. Now, when we are fully present, we're not worrying about the past or having regrets about the past. We're not having anxieties about the future. That by itself is going to greatly reduce the amount of stress that we have, because we need to first accept that we can't change the past, and that we also need to know that the future is going to do its own thing. Sure, we can prepare, we can plan and do all those things, but unless we take care of what's happening right in front of us right now, it's not going to be the way that we want it to be in the future. So being able to be present, to have a still mind, to be calm, to have silence even, that's going to greatly reduce the amount of stress and anxiety that you experience. Number two, it's going to greatly enhance your relationships. And the reason is, when you're present with someone, when you are focused 100% on that person and the conversation that you're having, without judgment, without labeling, without thinking about your own drama, the connection that you're going to have in that moment is going to be potentially unlike anything you've ever experienced before if you have not ever been present with someone. And because of that connection, it's going to immediately, influence that person. That person's going to experience something they haven't experienced before. And it's going to lead to greater relationships, more trust, just sort of a better understanding of people, yourself, and whoever you're speaking with. Number three, greater self-awareness, obviously, for who you are, what you're about. You get to experience who you are based upon the unfolding of now. I don't want to sound like I'm beating a dead horse here, but our identities and our senses of self are so tied to just stuff that we can't change that probably isn't even as bad as what we think it is. And we think that the only way we're ever going to be able to solve that or feel better is by something happening in the future that probably seems pretty far-fetched, if we're being honest. And we don't have to exist like that. We don't have to feel that way about the past and have this hope for the future. We can just actually experience everything and solve everything now by being present and just focusing on what's going on here and not having these stories and this mental noise influence us as much as it does. I wrote here, cultivating presence requires us to observe our thoughts, emotions, and sensations without judgment. It can lead to greater self-awareness, and as we become more attuned to our inner experiences and learn to recognize patterns in our thoughts and behaviors. So, yeah, that's enough for that one. Number 4, deeper appreciation and gratitude. So when we are fully engaged in the present moment, we're more likely to notice and appreciate the beauty and richness of life, which in my experience is that's really the core thing I've been able to take away from my own sort of practice of trying to be present, to trying to live in the moment. I'll touch on that here in a little bit in this video. And then these last two, I wanted to kind of think about like a sort of more practical things that some of you that are like, oh, well, that's all sort of woo-woo stuff. These are, I think, are very valuable even in like the business world and so forth. So improved focus and productivity. When you can give your full focus to the task at hand in front of you, you're able to not be distracted. You're able to use more of yourself, whether it is your logical brain, your body. You can channel energy. You can increase your focus. That absolutely is going to increase your ability to do things in a shorter amount of time. And the second one that I was thinking of is it's going to enhance your creativity and your problem solving. It can create a new space in your mind for new insights and ideas to emerge. When we allow ourselves to quiet our mind, we let go of the habitual thought patterns that are so deeply ingrained into all of us. And when that happens, you open up a different space for things to happen. So I don't want to try to spin this as like, oh, well, business guys, you can be interested in this now. But I did want to at least throw in a few very tangible benefits, that it's not just, you feel better spiritually, or you can, do this or that. No, I think there can actually be things that will help improve your life situation of, the things that we talked about here. So, again, living in the present moment is about less focus on past and future, less identification, and less clinging to the things that are going on in our mind. And it's more about being here in this very moment, looking around us, bringing our awareness here, and seeing what's unfolding and how we can just engage with that unfolding and figure out what's next, and just live, just exist. So those are the benefits, and a little bit of an explanation of what this is. I do quickly want to talk about some practical ways that have been taught throughout history of ways to sort of access this present moment, because it's not going to be just I'm not going to focus on my thoughts anymore, and now I'm going to live in the present moment. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that, so we have to sort of slowly sort of train our mind to be able to let go of that and be able to bring our awareness to other things. So the first one here, I'm sure most of you have heard about meditation, but there's a lot of different ways to meditate. So this one is pretty common, but it's essentially about stilling and quieting the mind. So what you do is you can sit there, most likely with your eyes closed, and you either focus on your breath or you focus on some sort of a mantra. It could be a sort of a noise, or it could just be a repeated saying that you enjoy to say. Now, when you're in that state for 15, 20, 30 minutes, however long you choose, as you're trying to really focus on either the breath or the mantra, your brain is going to be thinking about other things. Thoughts are going to pop up, and then thoughts are going to go away. The goal is not to judge those thoughts. It's not to be upset with yourself like, oh, I'm supposed to be focusing. But it's just letting those thoughts pop up and then letting them go away and just go back to your breathing. Don't focus on them. Don't worry about them. Don't judge yourself for it. And as you do that, you start to learn to let go of these things that are popping up in your mind, just like the stories and narratives that we create, just like the mental chatter. Doing this meditation will help still the mind and sort of put it in a place where it is sort of going to become second nature. And you're also going to even be able to say, you catch yourself whenever you're out in the world saying, oh, well, I'm telling myself this story. It's not true. Let's focus on being present again. Another one is conscious breathing. And that sounds probably a lot like meditation, but this one for me works really well when I'm out and about, mainly outside of my house, particularly in nature. If I'm out there, I take one very deep conscious breath, let it out real slow, and then I start to ask myself, where am I? Where am I? And then I start to look around and start to basically allow my sense perceptions to guide me on what to focus on. Whether I'm, if I'm on a walk, for example, I could look at the trees, or I could look at some flowers, or whatever it may be, and I try to look at those things without labeling, without without labeling, judging, doing all these things that we do. It's hard to do. It's hard to look at a plant and not say, wow, that's really beautiful. It's hard to look at an alleyway that's full of trash and say, oh my God, somebody needs to clean that up. But see, these are the things that our brain naturally does, and we have to learn how to train it to not do that. We want to live in a world where we don't have a reactive labeling or a comparison, because we'll never be able to fully embrace and experience life in its fullest when we have that sort of natural unacceptance of what is. So the conscious breath for me just allows me to remind myself, okay, where am I? What do I want to bring my attention to? Because in the beginning, it's really important to be able to learn how to sort of collect your awareness. And that's a strange term, but there's a way that you can sort of harness and collect your awareness and your focus, and then you can learn to sort of put it towards different things. And that really helps. And the reason why it helps, because a core part of this is about getting outside of our head, bringing the awareness from outside of our head more into our body. And the body has a lot of energy in it, and when you consciously focus on that, you're actually able to feel different energy in different parts of your body. So as the practice of conscious breathing, you can also, once you take that first breath, start asking yourself where you are, then you can start to say, okay, I'm gonna feel the energy in my feet. Even if you're walking, you can say, okay, I feel this energy. And then you can start to feel the ground energy sort of pushing back. And you'll be so surprised the first time this actually clicks, whenever that happens. And you start to realize a couple seconds go by and like there's no thought that comes into your head. You're just literally focusing on that awareness, and sort of the rhythmic nature of it just sort of calms you. Things slow down a little bit. And for me, the experiences that I've had in that present moment, they're kind of hard to explain with words, but it just feels like everything has just it's like such a deeper level to it. It's like normal everyday consciousness just feels very surface level. And whether it's, a plant or an animal, the colors are just much richer, much deeper. Sounds just feel like they're sort of emanating from inside of me. Same with like a smell, or if I'm walking and feel air upon my skin, it just feels like it just sort of awakens this energy even inside of me, and it just feels like a completely different experience. So going into the body is very powerful because it starts to teach us, again, how we can sort of channel that energy, channel the awareness more than anything into different parts of our body to feel the energy. And when we do that, we're sort of taking that egoic mind out of the driver's seat. It'll always be there. I don't think even the gurus and the masters that talk about this throughout history have ever been able to completely get rid of the egoic mind. I think it's always just about quieting it. So we have to keep that in mind in our own practice. We can't judge ourselves. We can't get angry that the thoughts keep coming, and we have to let them go. That's really the core of it. We are non-judgmental. We're accepting of what's happening, and we can go from there. So briefly, just want to address some common challenges that you'll definitely experience. So inertia is going to be a big one. For me, it's 37 years living, and I have lived with a very overactive egoic mind for that entire time. And it's taken a long time to even experience a little bit of movement to the other way. However, that one slice of what I've experienced has been very powerful, and it's enough for me to say this is real, and I want to keep going. The constant wandering mind is something that we just talked about, that's not going to necessarily go away. So it's really, really important when you're trying to practice on being present with the present moment, grounded in being, not getting upset with yourself when things just keep coming through and keep coming through and keep coming through. It might be like that for a while, but if you stick with it, and when you are aware of something, of one of these thoughts sort of going and your mind's wandering that way, if you can bring it back and focus back on the breathing, focus back on whatever you're trying to focus on, it's going to get better eventually. And then, another one, I think some people are so wrapped up in some of this that the idea of stillness, the idea of silence is actually frightening for them. And I understand that. And but if you feel that way, that does not mean that it will always be that way. I think the biggest thing would just be to start to continue to do what we talked in the first 2 weeks about understanding sort of the nature of what's happening in here, bringing awareness to it, and really sort of questioning the identities and the sense of self that you've been creating based upon the past and sort of the desires of your future. It's going to be a long road, but people that feel that way, they're going to be the ones that experience the greatest transformation, and that's meaningful. That those are the people that potentially need it the most, that imagine silence and stillness is frightening. So, this is not easy stuff. This is probably things that will take years and years. But as I mentioned a second ago, for me, I know that this is real. I know that it's something that I want to pursue, and I'm going to keep going. I don't know what the end result will be, but I'm hopeful that I will continue to get new slices of whatever this is on the other side, and it will continue inspiring me to keep going. But even if it stopped here, I would still enjoy just the idea, or not the idea, but just the actual experience of trying to quiet the mind and bringing awareness, because the things that I outlined, whether it's improve self-awareness, enhance relationships, reduce stress, anxiety, I've definitely experienced those already, and I've been sort of down this path for a little less than a year now. So I encourage you, if this stuff still sounds interesting for you, I encourage you to keep going, and I'll be here to help. And if you have questions or if you want to talk about anything, let me know. So we'll definitely be going back into this topic many times throughout the next couple of weeks. This is the core of sort of where we're going, or at least the vehicle of where we're going. So hang in there. I send words of encouragement to you, and just take it one day at a time. So thank you for watching this video, and we will be back next week. Appreciate it. Take care.